Thank you for joining us tonight on our family learning session. Tonight, we are going to be learning about a wonderful resource. It's called parentguidance.org. And we have Michelle Barch joining us. She is the Director of Programs and Partnership with the Cook Center for Human Connection, a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting mental wellness and preventing suicide. We also have the speaker, Dr. Kevin Skinner, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist. He has been working with families for over 25 years. As a member of the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapists, he's worked with and trained other clinicians as a supervisor and presenter. He has created online assessments focused on guiding and developing the best treatment for individuals and families. These have been administered to over 250,000 individuals. Dr. Skinner is also the co-founder and clinical director of Bloom for Women, a family clinic focused on helping people with trauma, betrayal, and recovery. Dr. Skinner has been featured in Psychology Today. And Dina Fell is the programs manager with the Cook Center for Human Connection, a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting mental wellness and preventing suicide. The Cook Center supports general programs like parentguidance.org, My Life is Worth Living, Kindness Clubs, and Hope Squad. So thank you for being here, and we can. I give you the word. Thank you.
Thank you, Minerva. We're so appreciative to get to be here. I just want to say that I am in Dallas and we're having storms, and my internet is a little unstable. So if I'm frozen, Dina's going to take over. And of course, you're really here to hear from Dr. Skinner and not from me. I do want to say, though, that at the Cook Center, what we do is we find great programs, and then we fund them and help them become available to others. We're a nonprofit, and I'm so excited to be able to share this resource with you today. Again, it's a free resource for parents, and we'll walk you through it. And Dr. Skinner has so much to share. But first, we want to know a little bit about you. So, Dina, she's going to share a tool that's called Mentimeter, and you play along with your phone. So if you take your phone and go to menti.com, and then you can use the code 2528110, and you can play along. What age are your children? We'd just like to know. Awesome.
And if you have multiple kiddos, you can put in multiple grade levels.
Absolutely. So I see we're pretty much, well, no, let's see, we're pretty, we have half of you guys are with elementary age children, and then pretty even on the middle school and the high school. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. As we go along, we are going to use our Mentimeter tool, and it's going to help us to know what your concerns are. So let's go ahead, Dina, and go to the next one, Mentimeter. So what we'd like to know are, what are your biggest mental health concerns for your children? And you can enter in more than one word. And the more times a word is put in, then the larger that word will appear. Go ahead and add those in. Let's see, depression, anxiety, lack of motivation, screen time. peer relationships, technology. Yes, yes. And then I'd like to ask you to take just a quick survey. So Dina, if we could advance to the
Sure thing.
next slide. I would like to know, how equipped you feel. So on a scale from 1 being poor to 5 being excellent, how equipped do you feel to support your child's mental health and well-being? Do you know where to find resources that will help you navigate your child's mental health needs? And how interested do you feel your community is, and how interested are they and supportive of your child's mental health? Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. We really appreciate that. And on our next slide, Dr. Skinner is going to share here in just a minute about his latest research in working with children. But in the meantime, I'd like for you to go ahead and type in your questions that you have for Dr. Skinner as he's speaking, and that way we'll be ready just in time. So it is my distinct privilege and pleasure to introduce you guys to Dr. Skinner. I've worked with Dr. Skinner now for probably almost 9 months, and he and I've been doing mental health webinars all across the country for families. And every night we have these webinars, I'm more and more amazed and impressed with Dr. Skinner's skill, his knowledge, and I just wish I had him on speed dial when my children were younger and growing up, right? So again, I just want to say, Dr. Skinner's 25 years of working with families and helping parents navigate, this crazy time where, we don't have an instruction manual for children. His experience, I do want to also add, Dr. Skinner does have 8 children. So he has a little bit of a personal experience in raising children. And Dr. Skinner, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really excited to hear what you have to say.
It's always good to be with you and everybody who's going to be watching, and just thanks everybody for participating. I would like to begin by talking about our children's mental health, which I think if we're educators and or parents, this is a big deal. I was talking with a parent in our community, and he's like, we have kids at our house and we're interacting, and these are good kids, but they're struggling. They're struggling with some of the things that you've outlined, anxiety and depression. And one of the things that we've been just really trying to understand is what's happening with this generation that's coming up. And the reason why it matters is because we've seen an increase in mental health issues. In a wonderful book by Dr. Martin Seligman, the founder of positive psychology, he said that over the past 50 years that we have had an increase in depression that's 10 times what it was 50 years ago. Now, that's a big deal. If you think about depression increasing that much, and then you take some of the recent research that actually comes from Carol Twenge in San Diego, and she's one of the foremost experts on studying adolescents and their overall mental health and well-being. Now, one of the things that she found, which in her study is about 2011, 2012, there began to be what we call a hockey stick in the research field. And it goes from this kind of gradually going up to this absolute spike up in anxiety. And it was curious to the researchers, like, what in the world is going on? Why is anxiety going higher? What happened, or what's happening? And they looked at the different factors. Was divorce rate going up? Was there more abuse in the home? Was there more problems in the schools? No. And they continually searched, and they found there was one key variable that just had a tremendous influence on our adolescents' anxiety. Now, my guess is, if you were to think about it long enough, you would probably come up with what most of those researchers discovered. And it has to do with this thing right here, screen time. And what they found is that there's a significant increase in screen time usage. In particular, people having their own smartphones began to increase, and adolescents were given their own phones. As a result, they started downloading their apps, right? Whether it's Facebook, Instagram, whatever apps they prefer. And they began consuming in ways that was not anticipated. And what began to happen is now we're spending more and more time on this phone, this screen, playing games, chatting with friends, which isn't always bad. But what happens when I'm staying up late at night and not going to bed because my friend says, "Hey, are you asleep?" Well, what do you mean am I asleep? It's 12:30. Of course I'm asleep. You get the point. And so now it's influencing their sleep patterns. And then the researchers started looking at some of the outcomes. Well, did you know, for example, that if you push like on Facebook, the more times you like different things, the more likely you are to be depressed. Well, what? Why is that? Right? Wouldn't that be, I'm lifting up my friends, right? Why? Well, what happens when my friend gets 400 likes? I post something and I get 2. I guess I'm not right. I mean, and people don't like me as much. And so we started to do this comparison. Oh, by the way, my friend's in Hawaii for spring break, and we went to the pool in town. Oh, okay. So now you see that this expectation and this pressure. And now, what about social experiences? Are we engaging with our peers, or are we standing by each other, chatting with someone else? And you can go on and on. I could go after scenario after scenario after scenario. And now I'm playing games well into the night because this game is addictive, Candy Crush. And here I am playing this game over and over and over, spending this time, not focusing on relationships, not focusing on really my homework or other things. I'm tired. I'm not liked like other people. And I haven't even mentioned cyberbullying. Right? I'm just giving you and so we start to look at this pressure that's coming from these devices in ways that we had not anticipated. So this hockey stick of anxiety becomes a very true and real force that we were not prepared for. And we now know that over 50%, this is fascinating to me, over 50% of 13-year-olds have their own smartphone. So we're just randomly giving children smartphones, access to the internet and whatever things, not necessarily knowing what they're doing with their phone, whether that's cyberbullying, spending time on their apps, staying up late at night. I haven't mentioned pornography yet, but that's a possibility that could influence their lives and their emotions and their energy and the way they see themselves and other people. There's a host of other challenges that we as parents and educators have a responsibility to understand what these devices mean, how they influence our children's mental health. Oh, I haven't even talked about us as parents. Do you know, for example, that the average adult picks up this device? How many times a day do you think do they pick up this device? If I told you that the average person spends about 39 times they check their phone each day. Now, that's just checking their phone. How long do you think they're on the phone for whatever they're browsing or whatever they're doing? And now we start to accumulate time where we now know somewhere between, in adolescence at least, the average screen time is about 7 to 9 hours a day. What does that do to our emotions? What does that do to our mental health? What does that do? Now, again, I'm talking about maybe they're doing homework for some of it, maybe, but maybe they're playing video games, or maybe they're doing both at the same time, trying to pay attention in class while they're playing on their phone. You get the point. It's hard to have divided attention and get something out of education, but it's also preventing us, excuse me, from creating meaningful dialogue and conversations with our peers and sometimes with our own parents. So with that being said, that's just a short introduction into things that we're learning as we start doing more and more research about what's happening to our adolescents and their mental health and their well-being. We've seen significant increases in almost all mental health issues, everything from depression, anxiety, and unfortunately, suicide. As parents and educators, we have an opportunity to create a difference, to make a difference. But we need to be educated and informed ourselves, and then we need to prepare, forewarn, and forearm our children for really the challenges that lie ahead, because these devices are addictive, they are mentally consuming, and in many cases, we don't even know it until it's too late.
Dr. Skinner, that is so true. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I just, again, to be able to, to really be able to relate our children's mental health and be able to see the data that shows that, really social media has had a direct impact. That's incredible. That is
Yeah,
incredible.
real quick, one anecdotal story. I was reading a book called Digital Minimalism, and the author actually was talking to a founder of one of these big companies who had created an app. And the founder said, well, I actually know what this does to our adolescents. My children, they're not allowed to have this app on their phone. So you're the creators of it and you won't even let your own children on it? Man, seriously. Let's think about the implications of that, right? Anyway, that's just an example, but they create them to be addictive.
Unbelievable. Okay, who is the author? I'm going to put this in the chat.
Cal Newport, and the book is Digital Minimalism. And he's talking about intentionally limiting our time that we spend on these devices and being aware. And there's great research behind what he wrote about in his book.
Thank you. Thank you. That's something that we all need to maybe take a look at for sure. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because we've got some questions coming in, and let's go ahead and take your questions. So let's see, a couple of different questions here about anxiety. How can I help my son who is experiencing anxiety? He is a middle school student. Yeah,
well, let's start there. I think this is a great question. First of all, we now know that anxiety is a common issue for children, especially middle schoolers going to a new school, if this is their first time in middle school. And we know that as they begin to prepare, their bodies are starting to go through this transition called puberty. And so their emotions, their hormones are also changing simultaneously. So, we want to understand what anxiety is and what anxiety isn't. So let's talk just for a second about anxiety. Anxiety, there's different types, like social anxiety, a fear of being in social situations. Another form is what we call agoraphobia, where I'm actually afraid to go outside of my own home or outside of in the environment. It's really a fear of being in public. And that's a different kind of anxiety. And other types of anxiety would be a panic attack, where I physiologically feel like my heart's going to jump out of my body. And I have these physiological symptoms, tingling, almost if we're like we're going to have a heart attack. And it literally feels like we're just under a duress or conflict internally. And then we have what would probably be more common, and it's thinking anxiety, where our mind is worried always. We're constantly fearing, anxious about something. There's something's going to go wrong, or something, I'm going to say the wrong thing, which could also go in social anxiety. So I would want to understand how they're experiencing anxiety. That's a very important starting point. Is what type of anxiety are they experiencing? How long have they been experiencing it? We also know that depression, anxiety can also be genetically passed down. So we may have a history in our family of anxiousness. As an example, my grandmother, she couldn't be a public speaker. She couldn't maybe give a talk if she was asked to, or give a speech if she was asked to. She was too anxious to stand in front of people, which would be a form of social anxiety. And my mom has some anxiety, but for me, it passed over me. But I have children that have anxiety in ways that I hadn't seen before. So we also know that there can be a genetic pass down to anxiousness or anxiety. And then we want to understand what it's doing. So how can you help your son? Going back to this specific question, is to understand what type of anxiety they're experiencing. Now, the second thing that is really critical to understand here is anxiety needs to be expressed. I often say it needs a voice. If I'm feeling anxious, for me to say, hey, Michelle or Minerva or Dina, I am experiencing, the moment I give it a voice or I talk it out, it can lose its power. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to help our children give a voice to their fears. A few years ago, as an example, one of my daughters who has dealt with some anxiety, she was young, and we were at the end of the year, just past Christmas, and we were getting ready at our church to get to know your new church teachers. There was an activity at the church just to go be introduced to your new teachers. Well, my wife had been asked to be my daughter's friends, a little bit older or a little bit younger group, their teacher during the year. And my daughter was born in November, so she had a different teacher. Well, it comes time for the activity. My daughter comes in the room where I'm at. My wife's not there, and she says, I'm not going to the activity. Now, my natural instinct in that situation is, well, of course you're going to the activity. But fortunately for me, that day, I didn't do that. And about that time, my wife walks in and says, hey, it's time to go to the activity. And my daughter reiterates the thing, I am not going to this activity. Well, why? My wife asked wisely, and she said, quote, I'm afraid that my friends won't like you as a teacher. Now, again, as a parent, you could take that as a personal affront, or you could feel rejected, and you might have your own issues of not being adequate or enough. And fortunately, that was not my wife's response. But my initial response would have been, well, if you're not going to go down to your room. That could have been a very natural response for me. I'm not going down that route, biting my tongue, listening to my wife, who wisely said, well, sweetheart, do you remember when your friends were younger and you guys did joy school at our home? And my daughter said, oh, yeah, my friends came over and we played the games and we sang some songs and we did some activities. And my wife said, do you think they had fun then? And my daughter's like, oh, yeah, of course they did. That's all it took. My daughter at this point, she's, okay, Mom, let's go. Now, what was the fear? The anxiety. I'm afraid that my friends won't like you. Now, as a parent, again, I could simply say, well, of course they're going to like me. But wisely, my wife asked a question, getting to the root, the fear, my friends won't like you, anxiety. When you give expression to the voice, I'm afraid. My wife then says, well, what about the activities? And my daughter then has a thought change, like, oh, well, of course, that's not accurate. And off we go to the activity. Now, it may not always turn out like that, but the concept is if we can help give them the voice, the anxiety of voice, then we can understand, I'm afraid that they won't like me. Well, what about your friend Janine? Does she like you? Oh yeah, Janine and I have a great time. Well, what is it that you do together? Well, we play this game at school. Okay, well, she's your friend. Okay. And now what we're helping them do is create a different script to deal with the anxiety. And anyway, this is just a strategy, help give it a voice and understand it, but be very careful not to judge it. And, oh, well, that you shouldn't feel that way. That's, but listen to it, understand it. I can understand when I was your age, I felt similar feelings. Well, how did you go through it, Mom or Dad? Well, these are some of the things I've learned over the years. Maybe they would be helpful for you. So these are just some simple strategies that you can use with your child to help them give a voice to their anxiety. But as a parent, you want to understand how that anxiety is influencing them. Is it social anxiety? Is it panic attack? What's it like? I can tell you the difference. Panic attacks scare everyone to death because it literally shuts them down, and they want to protect themselves. Anyway, so those are just some things to be aware of, and good luck with your middle school student.
Dr. Skinner, we've got a couple of questions that I think are very related here. One is, how do I get my child out of their room and interacting with us? He doesn't even want to be with friends, just wants to play video games. And a follow-up question is, my son seems happy on his own, but I worry about his isolation. Should I or can I encourage more? So those two questions are kind of similar.
Yeah, so you know what? That's sometimes we have to understand, is our child introverted? Are they extroverted? An introvert really does do pretty well in isolation. They really like being alone. They don't need too much stimuli, but they need some. So again, my son seems happy on his own. Great, but what's he doing on his own? If it's on a video game all the time, then that is influencing the mental pathways of the neurons of the brain. And I would want to get a multitude of other experiences. Exercise would being a primary one, but family activities. I want movement. With all children, we want physical movement. They need to exercise often. It's one of the best things that they can do for their brains. It also helps them release some of the energy. Today in our world, we have a common issue that is related to globesity, being overweight. And what we know is that through regular exercise, it's good for our minds, our brains, but it's good for the body, it's good for digestion. And so we want to get our children doing other activities, not just being on their own, which really gets me to this other question: can't get them out of the room and interacting with us. That means that as a family, we're going to go do some activities. We're going to go for bike rides, hikes, walks, swimmings. We're going to do activities intentionally, because video games can consume the brain. I remember a few years ago, I remember that there was a story where a young man had spent literally 2 years in the basement of his home. Now, can you imagine being in the basement of your home for 2 years? Basically, mom and dad didn't say much. He just came up, got food, went back down, played video games. It was 2 years. Now, what's amazing about that is he didn't realize he had just spent 2 years of his life playing this video game, World of Warcraft. These games are consuming. As parents, we need to be intentional. We need to limit the time. We need to have alternate activities to replace those. Don't forget, some games can be addictive to the mind, just like a drug can. There's no question about it. So we need to be intentional, plan activities. They did a research where they actually took depressed, anxious children. They took them up in the mountains, went for hikes for an entire week. They had a great trip, food, everything was along. They did all kinds of activities. They came back down from the mountains without any devices during that week. Their depression scores were significantly lower. Their anxiety scores were significantly lower. So being intentional about that and limiting certain days of the week. You may simply say, we are not going to be on devices on whatever, choose the day, Saturday, Sunday, whatever it is, but spend time away from the activities, from the television, from the games, and observe what happens in your child. Do they know how to do other things? Mom, I'm bored. Well, it's easy to just say, hey, well, okay, let them be on the computer, let them watch TV, let them whatever. Intentionally plan activities, have friends come over, play games. I know that many people have been concerned about COVID, but as we move through COVID, we really want to be intentional about getting our children into activities. And it does take more time and energy, but get your kids, take them to the local pool, go on bike rides, go on hikes. You don't have to spend a ton of money, but be physical in terms of activities. It's great for their mental health and their well-being.
True. Well, this is another follow-up question here. It says, when my child misbehaves, my first reaction is to take their cell phones from them. Is that a good idea?
I'm going to say that most misbehaviors, and before I answer the question, is a good idea. I'll let you answer your own question. What drives a misbehavior? Now, every misbehavior has a reason. There's always a story behind it. Now, I can focus on the rule of taking away a cell phone. I'm right. That's historically, that's what we do. You do something, then I'm going to take something away, right? It's a consequence. But perhaps we're missing the question. Why is the child misbehaving? What's driving the lie or the whatever the behavior is? If as parents we ask that question, we might still take away the cell phone, or we might not take away the cell phone. If we're going to create the interaction of trust with our children, we're going to create relationships before rules. We're going to understand misbehaviors. There's a driver to it. And if we understand what's driving the misbehavior, then we can make intentional consequences, if whatever they may be, and do it in a way that our child understands the reason why. Every time we give a consequence, we have to explain the why. Ideally, all consequences would be discussed before the misbehavior. For example, if your child lies to you, if there's lying in our home, there are consequences. I expect, and we expect in this home, that we're going to be honest with each other. If there's one thing that hurts relationships, it's dishonesty, as an example. So we educate our children in advance. What do we do if someone in the family lies? And what we create is what my friend, Dr. Lane Fisher, calls umbrella rules. We create rules for the entire family. And it's applicable to mom, to dad, to the adolescents, to younger children. And whatever those agreed upon rules are, we also say, what are the consequences if we're not? The outcome of such a agreement is that we all understand the rules. Relationships before rules, understanding what the consequence is, makes it so everyone understands and there's not resistance. Because many times adolescents in particular, well, that's a stupid rule. Back it up, focus on the relationship, expectations, umbrella rules, so we all understand. Then it's a whole lot easier to apply a consequence when it's a clearly explained boundary or rule in our family. That's how I would approach it.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense when you say it, Dr. Skinner. Here's another question. My daughter has started cutting. I don't know how to help her. What's your advice, please?
This is one that we are asked quite a bit, Michelle. I would suggest we probably take them to parent guidance just so they can get a little bit of exposure to that. On parent guidance, it's a website that we've created just really to provide resources to parents. And one of the places that we have is called a question and answer. And this is a common question that we get. And so I answered this question probably about 4 or 5 months ago. So I think if we can find that question real quick. Yeah, right there, you found it. And if we could go there, then they can at least have an idea of what the Q&A is.
Sure. I caught my 11-year-old self-harming and I don't know what to do, right? Here,
Yeah.
let's listen to your answer, Dr. Skinner.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kevin Skinner. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I want to thank you for taking time to ask your question here at Parent Guidance. Your question is that you caught your 11-year-old self-harming and you don't know what to do. It's an important question because it's one that we're getting more and more frequently, not only as therapists, but it's a question, what's going on? Why is this happening? And as parents, it might be picking, it might be cutting, it might be scratching, it might be picking, whatever it is that they're doing. The research suggests that it is the inability to cope with emotions. You could call it anxiety. It could be situational. Something's occurred in their life, being bullied, maybe something that they've done that they feel guilty or ashamed about. There's a lot of possible reasons why they would do some self-harm. The question that we as parents want to figure out is what's driving that? What's making them what we would say that kind of anxious? Because we now know that a lot of it is anxiousness. We don't know what to do with these emotions. And when you don't know what to do with your emotions, it's highly probable that you're going to seek something for soothing. And that's actually what the researchers have found with self-harm, is that individuals are trying to soothe the anxiousness, the internal emotions that they're feeling. And the research also has found that it provides a temporary relief from those difficult emotions. Then, if that's the case, the solution would be to help our children regulate difficult emotions.
I'm going to go ahead and stop there in the interest of time. And I'm going to encourage everybody to get on parentguidance.org. I'll walk you through it here in just a minute so that you guys can also, ask your questions after tonight and see what all the resources that are there for you as parents. So let's go back to our question here. This is a good one. They're all good, but this is a really interesting. Are students' mental health, are our students' mental health challenges related with screen time doing remote learning?
That's a good question. I believe that remote learning may have added to an already existing problem, but I don't think that we have an option. We didn't have an option with COVID. But I do know that many parents, many teachers were absolutely overwhelmed with the transition from in classroom to online. Teachers, they were doing double duty because they're, trying to get classrooms together. And now I've got to create this online. And what happens when half my students aren't there? Or right? How do I grade assignments? How do I connect with my students? And so teachers are doing double duty. Teachers absolutely need to be praised for what the effort that was put in during this COVID pandemic. It's just, my daughter began her first year last, August, September. And I'll tell you what, I am just amazed at how much work she put in just to get students involved and engaged in the 6th grade class. So with that being said, to answer the question, mental health challenges are maybe related to screen time, but think about how hard it is to learn on the screen. Just really paying attention and not letting your mind wander, because we're not used to, say, 15 minutes of focusing on a screen. Think about the way screens are designed. You scroll down on Facebook, for example. If you're watching television, they have segments that are really short. They're 5 to 10 minute segments, and then there's a commercial. It's fast paced, go, 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 go. And now I'm going to sit and listen to my teacher on a screen for 15, 20, 30 minutes. That's not the way our brains have been programmed based upon the way that the media is presenting it. So it's a very different way of the brain to function. And so it's harder. It simply is harder for me to attune to this topic for an extended period of time. So I think that it's been harder for everybody, the students, the teachers, and everybody. And when we start to feel like we're not getting it, we're falling behind, sometimes we give up. We begin to feel hopeless or helpless. And I talked with many teachers who saw straight A students turn into C and D level students because of the overwhelming screen time, lack of interest. And it's unfortunate because these students in class were performing extremely well. So how does that then influence our mental health? I am grateful that we are beginning to pull through this pandemic, and my hope is that we can get back into social interactions in our schools as quickly as possible, primarily, not necessarily for the learning, but for the relationships. We miss social interaction. I can learn 1,000 ways. I could learn online. I could do online learning. But what I'm not getting is the relationships that are paramount to my mental health and well-being. I firmly believe the best mental health that we're going to have will come from our relationships, the interaction with our peers, our teachers, interaction. That's where we get the most bang for our buck when it comes to human interaction and our overall well-being. So anyway, I do believe it can be influencing our mental health. I think there are other factors as well. Parents feeling overwhelmed. I mean, the truth is parents need a break from children, and children need a break from parents. And that's it. I just believe that's just good for everybody. I mean, my children need their friends. I mean, mom and dad are great, but they need a break from me. I promise they do. And I probably need a break from them.
Well, there's another question here. The pandemic is affecting everyone's mental health. What can I do to take care of myself? And Dr. Skinner, I think I have a couple of answers that I can share through the Parent Guidance app, basically. So if I could just share that with everyone, here is Parent Guidance. And if you want to follow along with me, I would love for you to sign up for free. So you go to parentguidance.org. Dina, if you'll put that in the chat, parentguidance.org. And notice here it says join for free. Click there. And just really quickly, it's going to ask you to create a username. I always just use my email. Then it's going to ask you for your email again. That way it's easy to remember. Create a password that's easy to remember. Select your location, and then, accept the terms and condition and click join now. Go ahead and take a minute to do that. This is free to join. And what I'm going to show you here are free resources that are here just for you, created just for you. So we have courses, all kinds of courses that you can take in the privacy of your own home. These are on demand, so you can start them, stop them, take more than one at one time, however you want to take these. But for example, these are just a couple of featured courses. Unlock your inner parent superhero. Or maybe connect with your child by parenting on purpose. I know that now that you've heard Dr. Skinner, you're going to want to take every single course that he has on here. Let me go a little further. We have Dr. Greg Hudnall, who has done a course, How Parents Can Prevent Suicide. Dr. Greg Hudnall is the leading suicide prevention expert. He is the most committed, caring, and knowledgeable man on the subject of suicide prevention, across the nation. I encourage every parent to take his course. And then we have, these are such fun courses. So these courses are about how to, or what to expect as your child forms their identity. And these are wonderful. Dr. Skinner has done it and broken it up by age groups, because there are different expectations for different age groups. They're going through different things. I just kind of want to share with you this one. Let's look at what to expect when my child is 11 to 14 years old. When you look at the course, you can see about the author. It'll tell you all about Dr. Skinner. You can get a synopsis of the course here. You can also see the content and all of the different items that he's going to cover during the course. And I can also watch a trailer to see if the course is something that I want to watch. So let's hear what Dr. Skinner has to say in his trailer.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kevin Skinner. Welcome to Parent Guidance. This class, we're going to be focusing on how to help your child in their middle school and junior high years. Really, I'm looking between the ages of 11 and 14. Now, if you've got a child that's either getting ready to go into that age group or already there, this class is for you. One of the things that we are going to be focusing on is how your child's identity is influenced as they transition from elementary school into this middle school and junior high school. Their identity is really shifting at this time because we're actually getting ready to go through puberty. And oh goodness gracious, that's the time. So my hope as we go through this course is that you'll be able to see some of the things and predict some of the things that you're going to experience with your child and go, oh, that's what's happening here, and this is how I can help. So that's what our focus is on this class.
And I think that is so helpful. I often say my boys are a year apart. And just as I was sure that the oldest one, there was something really wrong with him, he would stop doing it and the younger one would start. And I would go, oh, okay, it's just a phase. It's just a phase. Hey, the other thing that I want to share with you guys is our Ask a Therapist section. So as we showed you just a minute or two ago, we have this library of questions that parents have asked. And if when you click on Ask a Therapist down here in the right hand corner, when you click there, you can actually ask your own question and one of our therapists will answer it and post it anonymously right here. And you can see we have a plethora of questions from so here are some of my favorite questions, right? One says, I think I went too far here. One says, my 3-year-old is having anxiety. There it is. My 3-year-old is having anxiety, but my pediatrician's blowing me off. Or this one right here. My 33-year-old daughter just recently moved back in with her 6 kids, and I realized she doesn't parent. Those are two people who really need a lot of help. And again, I think about this one where we already looked at this self-harm, but I also think about that mom that's been working hard all day long, and she comes home, cooks dinner, probably cleans up dinner, feeds everybody, gets everybody their homework and their bedtime routine, does, the last few things that she needs to do. And then she's headed down the hallway to bed, sees a light under a door, opens it and finds something disturbing, whatever it may be. Well, it's 11 o'clock at night. Who are you going to call? What are you going to do? She's not going to sleep. I would submit to you, go to parentguidance.org. See if someone else is facing the same challenges that you're facing. See if there's an answer there for your question. And if not, ask your question. It is a tremendous resource that's there for you on demand 24/7 in the privacy of your own computer. And I do want to go back so that I can make sure to answer the question about how do I help myself for my own mental health. When you look at courses and you go down, you see that we have courses, all kinds of self-help for parents. Feeling overwhelmed? Here's a guided meditation. Yes, Minerva, I know. Stopping the yo-yo food cycle? I can tell you that's an excellent course. How to develop self-compassion, calming your anxious mind, everyday happiness, rewriting your self-beliefs, fearless confidence, coping, healing, and finding peace through mindfulness, beating the fear that you're not enough, body love, how to recognize shame talk and stop it, letting go of your deepest regrets. These are tremendous courses, and you can take all of these courses. So I just want to encourage you to please take a minute for yourself, right? Take a minute for your children and look at these courses and gain more knowledge, more help. How about if we were equipped before our child started having issues? What if we were equipped before we had to face things that we've never faced before and had no answers to? So that is our hope for you, that we could provide that for you. I'm going to go back to our Mentimeter. Dr. Skinner, I just can't thank you enough for everything that you have done for us, and all the answers to all the questions, and also creating this site, parentguidance.org. So I am, again, very appreciative of your time. Minerva, thank you so much for letting us be here tonight. But again, everybody, please answer this survey and let us know, how do you feel now? Now that we've kind of talked through some things, now that you know about parentguidance.org and you know that it's a free resource for you, let me know. How are you feeling? Are you feeling a little bit better about being equipped to support your child, and a little better? I know that this community is interested in your children, and Minerva has proved that by having these weekly family meetings. And again, Minerva, I just want to say thank you so much for letting us be here tonight and visiting with your families. And Dina, I just want to say thank you to Dina Fell for helping us out on our mental health nights. You are invaluable with the chat and the surveys.
Well, I have no words. I am really excited. I was listening to Dr. Skinner, and as he was talking, I was visiting the website. It's beautiful. I don't think you have enough time to finish everything. I mean, there are so many courses and so many, and I'm pretty sure that if there is another course that is not here, we can send a suggestion, and maybe that's gonna be there soon, right?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Well, I have nothing else to say. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Dr. Skinner. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate all the work you have put up together. Mental health is a huge challenge in our country, and this is a very easy way for families to have access to resources. Thank you very much. And well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right.